Are you ready to push your limits, to shatter expectations and redefine what is possible? Welcome to the Victory Multisport podcast, the show that fuels your passion and ignites your drive. Whether you're a seasoned triathlete, a weekend warrior, or a beginner dreaming of crossing that finish line, we're here to equip you with the knowledge, inspiration, and community that you need to achieve your endurance goals. We'll celebrate individual wins and great accomplishments, no matter the size, speed, or publicity. Get ready to be inspired by stories of incredible athletes, learn from expert coaches, and discover the mindset that transforms ordinary individuals into being uncommon. This isn't just a podcast. It's your training partner, your cheerleader, and your coach to ultimate victory. So lace up, clip in, and dive right in. It's time to unleash your potential. It's time for the Victory Multisport podcast.
Yeah, welcome to the podcast. Today I'm with my co-host, Coach Kenny. How you doing, Coach?
Dude, I couldn't be better. I'm with our big special guest sitting next to me. I'm super fired up, Dr. Mark. Big Tuna, Big Papa Pump. I have been waiting for this one for about a year, so I'm fired up, dude. How about you?
I'm doing well. Just got back from Kona. I don't know if you can see the shirt, right? But I got the big island on here, right?
So what was that like there, man? Because it was funny. In Mark's training, at one point, I had him ride with some of the girls that were there.
Right.
And he's like, wait a minute, are you really sending me out with Kona qualifiers?
Yeah.
Like, what are you doing to me?
Yeah.
And, but what was it like being out there with him?
It was amazing. Kona just turns up for Ironman every year for almost 45 years now. I think it is 45 years of doing the Ironman race in Kona. And amazing place, amazing scenery. You got the volcanoes in the background. You've got the emerald green ocean out in the front, and really just kind of magical in some ways. You can feel the energy of all the past Ironmen that have passed through there, and it was exciting times, and we had a good time.
Do you see a lot of the legends show back up there for that race? Like you might see at the Super Bowl, a lot of former players will show up, get interviewed.
Yeah, most of them, yeah, absolutely, because they're doing broadcasts the entire time. They had a broadcast booth there where Miranda Carfry and others were, doing the commentary, and then having guests come on those casts and things like that. Now, it was very female focused, so it was female professionals and female champions that were coming back because it was a female race. Now next year's going to be co-ed, but this one was all female, all women's racing. So it was a lot of the women champions and women interviews and women commentators, but it was fantastic, and it was very, very nice. We had a 5-hour block where they were way out towards Javi, where they're way out of town and we can't spectate them. So we were able to pull up at our Airbnb, the online broadcast, and just watch the pros and really get an inside look, because they had helicopters and drones and the chase motorcycles all, filming it live. So streaming. So it was awesome.
See, I always like that. Like anytime I watch a football game or a sport, and it's not Bob Costas who's doing it, but it might be Ozzie Smith, and he's talking about what the player's mentality is, and he's talking about what actually is happening because he played the game and he played it at the highest of levels. And I kind of like that, hearing like Rennie was out there commenting.
Yeah, she was.
Getting her, because she's been there. She's won,
Absolutely. And she's been in the fight, right? Because she's been behind and still won, right?
Yeah.
People down before. So it was really a great week. And the ladies, the 4 ladies we had, Mary Reed, Caroline Beard, Candace Kesselring, and Grace Clark from our team, I think they just had a great experience. Like, they were prepped. They were ready to go. They were able to get through their race, even though it was hot, long, Ironman, put the work in, but they had no mechanical issues, no breakdowns on their bike. They had no medical issues. None of them needed to go to the tent or anything like that. They had no challenges there. Just the normal, feed and hydration and heat and a little bit of cramping. But Caroline did run the soles of her shoe off. One of her shoe soles came off.
Sure, of course she did.
It's hot as hell, and she's
that's
of course
illegal.
fast, right?
That's illegal.
But she did a great job and just got through it. So,
well, I talked to all 3 of them, and that's like a privilege of me, and I got to get in their headspace a little bit. And it was the theme that all 3 kind of let off was grateful.
Yeah.
I'm super just grateful to be here.
Yeah, we might get them back on the cast together if we can get all 3 of them on the same day. So we're going to definitely get them in here and get them to tell a little bit more about what they saw and how they felt.
So it's definitely.
But that's not what today's all about.
No, you flew in earlier from your surfboard lessons just for Big Papa Pump.
That's right.
Podcast.
That's right. So I just got back like a couple days ago, and we had while I was out, we were scheduling this because we got Dr. Mark Fye here, recent Ironman Chattanooga 140.6. How you doing, Doc?
I'm doing great, thank you.
And they might have pronounced his name wrong there, but I was there. It was actually him who finished.
Yeah.
They did it to Bobby, too. Remember Bobby Dutrich?
Yeah,
You are an
absolutely.
Ironman.
They do
Mark
their best.
Fry.
They do their best. Not to go back to the Kona, but they had some announcers that work for Ironman that just were awesome because they must have spoken like 7 languages. So they were announcing people in French and German, and it was the same guy, right? One guy was doing all these languages. So it was pretty cool. So he would say their name in English, but then he would say, congratulations, you're an Ironman in their native language that they had listed on their profile. So it was really awesome. But you got to hear it, even though they put an R in your name, and you said that's really common for people in your life to put that R in there. But
It's the hidden R.
Yes, it is. But yeah, first of all, I'd like to really thank Multisport Victory and Coach Sarge and Coach Alice and even Coach Scott, who I rode with a few times over the summer, and especially Coach Kenny, who I think really brought me through this last year and got me where I was coming through that finish line at 10:30 at night after 14 hours of grueling activities of swimming and biking and running. So I just want to appreciate the help that you guys provided, which was quite a bit for getting me through this process.
oh, we love it. I mean, thanks for the accolades and appreciate the shout out there. But it's why we exist in this sport. It's why we do what we do. It's why we're on this podcast right now, is because we just love to be able to bring people through the journey that we found ourselves on many, many years ago and what it's brought to us and the types of things. And we'll unpack that today with you, right? About
Look forward to it.
what you learned and what you didn't expect and what you did expect out of it. So, but really in the tradition of our podcast, we'd like to just wind it back to, where you grew up and how you got into sports or athletics in the, young life, but then how that translated to later in life. You're near Pittsburgh, not right in Pittsburgh where you grew up.
Right. Well, obviously, I'm 60 years old now. So looking back on my endeavors over my life, I grew up near Greenville, Pennsylvania. So it's like Greenville, Sharon, about an hour and a half north of Pittsburgh.
Sure.
And at that time, I was a Dallas Cowboy fan. I wasn't a Pittsburgh Steelers fan, but we won't go there. Roger Staubach was my hero when I grew up. But I spent a lot of time on farms. So a lot of my cousins and my uncles had farms. And as I look at my endeavors related to sports, I enjoyed sports. I played a lot of backyard football, but I was the youngest of 4 children. And
Boys, all boys?
2 boys and a girl. And I think my dad realized that when I was younger that I had sort of more academic potential than my other siblings. And
Do you hang that over their head right now?
Well, unfortunately, they've passed away. But when I look back at my career in athletics, I did some track and field in high school and played some football a little bit in middle school. But my 2 older brothers did a lot of wrestling, and I went to Reynolds High School, and it's a huge wrestling community. And both my older brothers got concussions and had injuries in football and wrestling. So my dad said, as I was the youngest and 6 years younger than my older brother, he's like, you should study more and do academics and prevent the head injuries. So fortunately, it all worked out for me. But I spent a lot of time in the barn and putting in hay and doing a lot of hard work in the middle of July, where some people were on the football field doing their double sessions. I was in the barn, so I think I was probably working harder than they were, but sweating a lot more at that time. Not thinking about my saline content or my salt content like I did the last 2 years. But I think
there was no sweat test then?
Yeah, there was no Nix. Little plug for Nix I used the last couple of years for sweat, but definitely sweat a lot. And the other thing I did a lot was ride my bike from one house to another, doing mowing grass. So my summer was a combination of putting in hay and mowing grass and riding my bike from one place to another. So my cycling career started when I was probably 8 years old, or maybe even younger. But I've enjoyed cycling since up to this point. And so that's how I grew up. And I think as I look back at my childhood, it was a great childhood, and I worked hard, and I think a lot of that work ethic has played a role in my life up to this point, being a physician, a surgeon, and now an Ironman.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely sets a foundation for you to be able to be disciplined and stick to things, right? And so those summers were probably not, you did what you had to do, but you may not have overly enjoyed that, being in the hayloft in July with that sun beating down on that barn roof. So, but congratulations again. And, I know Kenny was with you during the race and at the race, supporting all of our athletes that were in Chattanooga and you included. So,
the hard work came out several years back. I mean, and just seeing him grind was just something to be just so proud of. It's all you can ever ask for.
Well, I had the Training Peaks program, and a couple of years ago when I started this, Coach Alice introduced me to Training Peaks, and as I went through my sprint triathlons and my Olympic triathlons and a couple of half Ironmans, and then ultimately the full Ironman, which I never thought at the time I'd ever do, but fortunately it worked out, and I accomplished that goal. But Training Peaks was a great way, and again, through Victory Multisport program, really allowed me to have a focus on a daily basis. And I think that really provided me, and I knew going into this that I needed to have somebody help me. It wasn't going to be done by just me doing a bicycle ride and a swim and a run. And like I said, probably 3 years ago, I didn't run very much growing up, but besides running for a catch for a football. But the issue is really training well, you need to have some support. And I think that was my first priority, is getting somebody there on my side that's going to be able to give me a daily routine. And Training Peaks and having something in there every day, I would look at it, and it provided that necessary stimulus for me to challenge every day to finish that. And I think as I look back over the 2.5 years or so of doing this, it's very rare that I would miss that.
Right.
Miss that Training Peaks.
You want to keep it green, right?
Right. And I accomplished that goal, and I think that's what provided me the ultimate experience of crossing that finish line a few weeks ago.
Yeah. Willard, again, thanks for the compliments. I mean, that's what Coach Alice and Coach Kenny, we're always in peaks trying to make sure the athletes are tightened up and seeing where they're at and asking questions when they're not hitting them, for some reason. And life gets in the way, and we understand that, and we make adjustments. But having the team around you, the support, and I know Kenny talks a little bit about, a couple of years ago when you first started with this, you're a little bit of a lone wolf. You didn't really, have too many other athletes that were around you. But this past year, you really, found like a crew, and there was people that were supporting you, wanting to ride with you, would be happy to ride with you. Kenny would force you to go ride with the Kona qualifiers a couple of times too. So how did that all play out?
Well, like you said, I mean, the first year, Coach Alice did a great job of getting me through my first half Ironman and a couple of the Olympics at Moraine. But, Coach Alice and another triathlete, Christine, as well as myself, went to Madison. Boy, it's been a year, last September. And
a lot happened in that year.
A lot has happened since that year, but getting into that first half Ironman, which is, I thought was going to be my ultimate challenge, was just do the half Ironman at the time. And once I accomplished that, it wasn't easy, but I did it. And I think I have to give some accolades to my wife as well, because I think without her support, I wouldn't be here sitting talking about an Ironman. So I do think that along with Victory Multisport, my wife was the biggest support system, because there were times where she's like, "What are you, crazy? What are you doing this for?" But ultimately, she was there to support me through all of this. And I have to give her the most credit for giving me the ability to do it, because like you said, is trying to find the time to do this is not easy.
Yeah.
And I think that as I went along over the last 2 years, fortunately, my 3 children are out of the house, and 2 have jobs, and 2 are, one in school now, med school, and one's in college, senior. But not having kids in the house does open up some time for you. And my wife gave me the time to put the training in, because it's, as you guys know, it's an hour and a half, 2 hours every night after a busy day. And then weekends are, builds up to 6, 7, 8 hours during a Saturday that you're gone, doing 105, 110 mile bike rides and 20-mile runs. So there's definitely a time commitment that's worked out for me. And I think that's a tribute to my wife as well as the programs you guys put together.
Yeah.
Hey, so Doc, when you were in those barns and you were baling hay and cutting grass, and did you, how often were you swim, biking, and running back then? Like, did you go after you graduated high school? Did you go into triathlon as your profession, or like, tell me a little bit about that?
Well, once I left the barn, I started to get in the library. So in college, probably back in high school, my dream to be an orthopedic surgeon, I think, started then, fortunately, and for various reasons. But, the only thing I did was a bike, basically. I didn't like running, and I didn't, we all learned how to swim, I guess, but,
Was your learning to swim, was it more, because we always hear it was for survival. I was just hanging out in the pool. Like, were you on a swim team? No. Or you were just fudging your way through it?
I was like most of my friends. I didn't get any lessons growing up, but, Greenville had an outdoor pool we'd go to. And, it's like most things, you learn how to do it. You learn how to ride a bike, you learn how to run, you learn how to swim. But it wasn't until probably a year and a half or 2 years ago that I really learned how to swim. So I think I attribute swimming like a golf swing. And I'm not a great golfer, but I enjoy the game. But when you look at the breakdown of a golf swing, it's just like swimming. So I really didn't know how to swim until probably 2 years ago, as I went to see my instructor that instructed my kids how to swim at Oxford Athletic Club in Wexford. I got in the pool as a 57-year-old trying to say, okay, I would like to learn how to swim now. So that was my beginning of really learning how to swim. So I think back in the day when I was a kid, we made sure we didn't drown, and waited half an hour after we ate lunch. But that was the kind of thing, just get in there and swim around. But learning to swim it's a difficult thing to do it properly. So that's when it started, probably 2.5 years ago, when I really learned how to swim.
So you're going through life now. You're through med school. Like, talk about that middle part of your life. Was you starting your family? Because you're cruising now, right? You're out of the barn. You're now through college. Where are you at now, and how involved is swim, bike, and running there?
Well, as I look back on my accomplishments, and I think as comparing it to finishing Ironman, I think the other thing that I'd mentioned to you earlier before the Ironman in September was, one of the biggest accomplishments in my life. I think, number one, marrying my wife was probably the biggest accomplishment, to have her say yes. But outside of that, getting into med school was a big accomplishment from where I grew up. I mean, most people didn't even go to college, so I was the first in my family to go to college. So I think I was very, very excited to be able to go to college, and to get into med school was a big endeavor as well. So like I said, I went from the barn to the library because I really wanted to get my ultimate goal of being an orthopedic surgeon requires a lot of hard work.
Oh, yeah.
And just like an Ironman. I mean, it equates perfectly for the two corollaries. But so once I got that letter from Hahnemann University, which is now Drexel in Philadelphia, it was quite the accomplishment. I was very proud of that moment to get into med school. And then my next goal was to get into orthopedic residency, which is very competitive as well. So again, you start using the same work ethic that I had as a teenager, and you work hard and basically do what you need to do to get the good grades and the research. And the next biggest accomplishment, I guess, when I got that letter from, every March there's letters you get that say where you're going to go to residency. And
Right.
when I opened it up and it said, Yale University Hospitals in New Haven, Connecticut, that was the next biggest accomplishment. Wow. So that's where I met my wife in medical school, fortunately, and she transferred from her residency at Thomas Jefferson to Yale for her rest of her residency. So once we got married, middle of my residency, my third year, I think it was, that we got married in 94. So then we'd spent 5 years in Connecticut and basically worked hard. And then I did an academic spine fellowship with a gentleman, Henry Bowman, who was the guru of academics at the time at University Hospitals in Cleveland. Spent a year there, and then we both were from the Pittsburgh area, so we ended up coming back to Pittsburgh, and my first job was at Allegheny General Hospital. Sort of an academic position. We're teaching residents and medical students and doing some research the first 20 years of my career.
Wow.
So through that there,
I mean, that's just like stick-to-itiveness to, do that. And I know a little bit about that because my daughter's, going down a similar path as you, with the medical. But, there is definitely hundreds of times where people are trying to, they're not trying personally, but the system is trying to get you to quit, right? And knock you out, right? There's an elimination process to that.
Ring the bell.
Yeah, ring the bell and it'll all be over, right? And there's no way you did that. And so I think that's a testament to the discipline that you learn growing up, the discipline that you have inherently in your, in your makeup. And I think that's played out really, really well. But you're really putting two things into perspective: the intensity of the academics, the knowledge, the thought process, and the preparation that you have to go through on a daily basis in your job, right? And then the preparation and the effort that you have to take for the physical world on this Ironman piece. Let's talk about those two things. I mean, we talked earlier before the cast started about, you do surgeries, you do spinal surgeries. That's what you do. You help people that, and you told us a story, and I'm sure you'll relate that. But it's not about the surgery, the actual surgery. It's about the preparation. You were talking about that.
Yeah, there's no question as you sort of draw parallels between me personally and what I do as a professional physician and orthopedic spine surgeon, and looking at what I do as an Ironman now. There's no question. The preparation is the key to all of that. Mm-hmm. And as we were talking earlier, as I go into my operating room, every time I go in, I think of the same things. I want to have the same things set up for me. And sometimes it's frustrating. Sometimes it works out perfectly as far as having the right crew in your operating room, but having the people around you, the support around you, is key to success. Obviously, you have to have my skills as a surgeon and being able to do the surgery, but having things prepared properly, having the right tools and having the right people around you is going to make that successful surgery. And so I apply that every day I go in the operating room. And, occasionally somebody will say, well, can you use this instead of this thing? I'm like, no, I can't. I need to have what I need. And I think that if you stick to your guns in regards to that, you're going to have good outcomes. And I think ultimately what's important to me is my patient comes back to my office and they're doing better. They have no arm pain. They have no leg pain. They have stability of their spine, and they're quite pleased with their surgical results. And that starts not the day of surgery. It's before the surgery. It's my preparation of what I'm going to do for that patient, as well as having the people in the operating room that are going to help me do that and have success. So that really applies to Ironman training. I mean, there's no question. As I look back now over the last few weeks and look at how much time and energy I put into this, which was quite a bit. And again, I have to give my wife some kudos here because she's really helped me. Although there's a couple of days where she was not too nice to me, but I won't go there. But for the majority of the part, probably 95% of the time, she's like, go do your thing. I know you want to do this. And that support in the operating room, that support at home, that support from Victory Multisport and the coaches, that is so crucial. I mean, I have to do my part and do the actual Ironman and do the actual training, but preparation is key to this. And there's no question. It applies to everything we do in life, right? I mean, I think as I look at being a father for the last 27 years, my oldest is 27, and, every time you get a chance, you give them little plugs of what's, failure is important, success, and here's what you need to do. And hopefully I've given a few things over my lifetime that applies to their life, and they can go forward and do the same for their kids, hopefully someday.
Yeah. I think that, back to the family support topic, I think your wife and my wife are probably in the same camp as far as wanting to support you doing your things because you're a stubborn person and you're going to kind of do them anyhow. But it makes you a better man. It makes you better at home when you are at home. It makes you a better husband when you are not training, but you did train, right? And when you have something that you're trying to accomplish and you have a goal in mind and you're not able to see yourself advancing towards it, it makes you frustrated, which makes you, kind of grumpy, and they don't like to be around you. And I found that in my life, and Kenny experienced that with me, as we were growing up in our neighborhood together with our kids, how this worked for us in positive ways. And I could see it all also happening in your family at this point, right? So that's awesome.
Well, and it's funny hearing you say today how in surgery I have to have that specific tool, or I have to have that table, or it doesn't make sense to me, because that is like a creature of habit. That is what leads you to success. That equals success in your mind. And then I look at his training over the last year, watching you call me to make sure you understood the sets, to make sure, do you want me paddles or non-paddles on the 500? Do you want me with fins or not fins? What am I going to do for my fuel? How are we going to do this? What's that going to look like? Like, he asked so many questions, and now it all makes sense to me. And it's not wrong to ask questions. That's what your coach is there for.
Correct.
But it makes so much sense now in the world to understand the 2 and the 2 plus 2, how that equals 4 in your mind. And you have to understand because you're going to do the work. The work is going to happen. It makes so much more sense to you when you have prepared and you've rested well and you've ate well. How many times we figured out, do we eat before a swim? Do we not eat before we swim? Do we have the Gatorade or not have the Gatorade? Like, we worked through so much, and that makes like the light bulb clicked when you said that, sitting on the other side of the table about that. My whole world was like, oh, okay, now I understand him 90 times better now, just because of what you do on your day to day.
Yeah, there's no question that preparation is the key to success. And I've seen it so many times in my life, and I'm seeing it in my kids' lives. When they prepare, they do better, whether it's a test or an interview or something. So, there's no question that this going through an Ironman experience has been, even at age 60. And I think that, interesting enough, that a lot of the people that I worked and trained with over the last year or two, most of them were younger than me. And I think that my message here, as well as a lot of my friends, like, oh my God, I can't believe you did that. I'm like, you can do it too. If I can do it, you can do it. So I think there's the discipline, the dedication, sometimes patience, but I think that, personality plays a role, but it's no question for me. Fortunately, I've grown up and had, a good work ethic, but I think a lot of people do this and not realize they could do it. It just takes, it takes a team, it takes support, but I think it's a doable thing for a 60-year-old. I mean, I've done it, and I'll probably do a few more, maybe not a full Ironman, at least unless my wife says I could, but I think that hopefully doing a couple more half Ironmans.
Well, we got you the race wheels, so now I have to go to Kona.
Exactly.
And I'm sure I got trouble for that too, because I was the one that Kenny told me to get this Wahoo that lifts the bike. He told me I need a 55-inch TV on the wall.
He's using us as an excuse.
Yeah,
it also, we go back to that point about your discipline or your attention to detail on all of the parts and pieces, whether it's the equipment on the table for your procedures that you're going to do at work, or it's us at Trek multiple times trying to get your bike with new wheels, aero box on there. What do I need to buy? Tell me what products I need. Being very detailed and specific, and we got you squared away, right? We got the race wheels on, we got everything for you, and they did a great job. But it does make total sense, as Kenny made the point now, as we understand how detailed you have. You must be when you have someone's spine in your hands, or their future basically in your hands. With that, you mentioned this before about the preparation being so important to the procedure because of the gravity of the situation that you have, in the operating room, right, with that patient, right? And I think that translates well to what we're already talking about, as we've already made mention. But there's people in your life that came through that professional contact, right? That got you into triathlon later in life. And I think that you've mentioned it a couple times that you're now 60, 57, learning how to swim. And I think that's a story to be told. You said everybody can do this that would want to do it. They should be able to do it if they have the discipline and they come after it. But talk about the few people, because there was a couple key ones that got you started thinking, like, maybe there's something I can do here, right? When you weren't really a swimmer, you were learning at 57, and you weren't really a triathlete growing up in, high school, college, or anything like that. You've just come to this later in life.
Well, as I look back over the last, I guess, almost 3 years now of sort of the triathlon process, I realized that a lot of people that I've met along the way now, it's not been a long time, but the last couple of years, most of them were swimmers in high school or track, cross country, track athletes. Most of them had one of the three, whether it was swimming, biking, or running. Most athletes have some type of, not necessarily professional, but, more amateur. They did some competing, which I didn't have, which gave me a little bit of, worry that I wasn't, a swimmer in high school, or I wasn't a cross country star in college or high school. And but when you look back, at least my short career of doing triathlons, what I did do a lot of was hiking and biking, I guess, is the last 20, 30 years, besides maybe some weight training. But I've always wanted to keep myself healthy for a lot of reasons, like we all do. But as I look back and say, okay, who influenced me on this? I mean, I think the beginning probably started when I was training for the Rachel Carson challenge. So for most people in Pittsburgh, they know who Rachel Carson is. And there's always this challenge every year on the longest day of the summer solstice usually, because you have from, daybreak to sunrise to sunset to finish it. So it's, 36 miles. And so looking at that training, probably 3 years ago, I did that, or 3.5 years ago in June. Prior to that, I was doing some training, just hiking, just being able to hike long distances. And so I noticed a few people that were trail running on the Rachel Carson Challenge Trail from Harrison Hills to North Park. Mm-hmm. So I'm like, oh, that seems like kind of fun. Let me look into this. So I went and REI and talked to some people about trail running shoes, and they get me a reasonable priced set of shoes. And so I started running a little bit in the trails. And a very good friend of mine, Pradeep Fillet, who is quite a triathlete, he's done a lot of triathlons, and he was doing the Rachel Carson Challenge as well. And he had talked to me and said, the sprint triathlon, which is the easiest of the four, the sprint, Olympic, and half Ironman for those people listening that might not know, but the sprint's the easiest there, and it's not that easy either. I mean,
it's the shortest.
It's the shortest, I should say.
Red Line City.
Yeah.
But so
you just go faster.
right. It doesn't take as long. But so that was my beginning, probably I guess 3 years ago, and maybe 3 years ago in June or July when it's at North Park. So I finished that and was quite pleased with. I didn't get to top three. I didn't get a medal that time, but for my age group, I was in the 55 to 60 then, or 59. But,
and we're not done with that yet. I know that's still a goal of yours to get on that podium.
Well, yeah, as a side story, I was going to do it this year thinking, okay, I turned 60, so I'll be the best at 60 to 64, but then Kenny told me I couldn't do it, and I was kind of bummed, but that's another story because I was in Sandusky, which another 10-minute talk, But at any rate, Pradeep was probably one of the first to kind of encourage me to do triathlons. Although I'd look back, and every once in a while I get photographs on your phone, and I remember that many years ago I'd actually done my first one. I should go back to that because it's interesting. I didn't know. I'm blanking her name now. The Marine. Joella. I didn't know Joella there, but she has Fit for Families. Give her a little plug, I guess. But in Zelienople.
Yeah.
So one Father's Day, probably must be at least 15 years ago. That was I said, for family, let's do it. So my youngest son and my daughter, my oldest son, I think was probably in high school. But the four of us went to Zelienople, and we did a triathlon together. So the two kids did their piece, and then I remember it might have been Joella that said that the adults are going to be like 4 or 5 hours. I'm like, oh my goodness, I'm not going to spend all day here. So we went and had breakfast. Then my wife and I went to Oxford, and we did the triathlon there. So we had a picture of the four of us with numbers on our shoulders, and I'm like, okay, I got to finish this, even though it was 17 years ago. So we went to Oxford and basically swam. I didn't know how to swim as well as I do now, but swam and got on the stationary bike, and we ran around the track. And so we were quite pleased that we actually did. That was probably my first triathlon. I forgot about that, but it was I guess it was a sprint version at that time, even though I didn't know much about triathlons. But I saw some pictures of my son and my daughter that we had taken recently that was from that experience. But at any rate, going back to sort of my start a couple of years ago, Pradeep was initially got me involved, and then, but backtracking, I guess, even the 6 months prior to that, I had a patient that came to see me December of 22, I guess it was, because it was before I did my sprint triathlon at North Park. But so his son had worked with me in the operating room as a tech for one of the companies I used. And so he recommended me to his father, who was a dentist. And so I saw him, it was the Christmas week. He came to my office right before Christmas and basically wasn't able to walk. He was paralyzed in his, I think it was his left leg, from a herniated disc in his thoracic spine. So typically you get it in your neck or your lower back, but the mid-back, the thoracic spine, it happens, but it's a little bit unusual. But so based on his findings, got an MRI scan urgently, and he had a large herniated disc at, I think, T10, T11, which is right the lower part of your mid-back. Mm-hmm. But that's where the spinal cord is, and it can cause paralysis in one or both legs if it's large enough. But he couldn't walk because of it was one of the legs, left leg, I think, was paralyzed. So he's a dentist, and I'll give him a shout out because he's a great person. But Wink, his nickname Wendell, is the dentist, and he's now retired now. But he was going around from patient to patient on a stool because he couldn't walk in his office, and it was that bad. So fortunately, I had the opportunity to see him as a patient, and he had the confidence in me to allow me to put a knife to his back and fix his problem. But we ended up operating on Christmas Eve because he was paralyzed, and that's more of the urgent emergent type of situation. So, it was a case that took about an hour and a half, I guess. But the next day, I went in on Christmas Day to UPMC Passivant, where I work now, and there's no physical therapist on Christmas Day, obviously. So I got him up, walked with him. We went down the hallway. I'm like, Wink, do you want to try the stairs? And so we took him to the stairwell, and he went up the stairs, back down the stairs, and he's coming down the stairs. He starts crying, and it was emotional for me too, because he was I'm thinking, oh my God, is he in pain? Mm-hmm. But I could realize he was coming down the stairs, holding on to the railing, but didn't have any help. But fortunately, he was crying with tears of joy because he was so excited that his actual leg worked now, that he could actually walk, and he was so grateful for what I was able to do for him, which it was a pleasure to be able to do this for patients, obviously, for the last 30 years. But so prior to the surgery, he had said, look, I do triathlons, and I know a little bit about triathlons, like a lot of my friends, I think they know, but I've learned over the years what that means, what a triathlon is, and the different types of triathlons. But so he basically he's like, we have to train together, because I had said, yeah, maybe I'll do a triathlon because I think that I've heard about it, and I was always didn't have the time to train, number one. But so he really motivated me, outside of my wife and Pradeep and the support of Wink, who was quite elated when I texted him on Monday morning that I'd finished a full Ironman. He was quite pleased because he's in his 70s now. And so we did train a few times together, swam at North Park, and he and I did the triathlon, the sprint, that following summer. So I guess that was July of 23. So that was Pradeep and my wife being supportive, and also Wink giving me the motivation to train together and to say, you can do this, because we all have doubts whether we can do it physically, and mentally is a large part of this, which I've learned over the last year. The mental aspect of a lot of these things are important. But with Wink's support and his doing so well, he was able to go back and continue to do triathlons and the sprint, and I think he might have done the Olympics since then. But so I owe him a lot of debt and gratitude for his support as well. But fortunately, I got the chance to meet him, perform surgery on him, and he did well, and he was quite pleased, obviously, that he could walk again. And so those two things, I guess, were the major contributors to my getting into this sport.
It's just funny how things come around, right? And you have really unexpected ways people, get you introduced to the sport. I'm sure everybody listening that's, involved in triathlon or even endurance running, it's always because of somebody else normally, right? Somebody else is like, hey, we should probably try to do this, right? Or, what do you ever thought about doing that, right? And at the time, maybe you're like, no, that sounds hard. But then you're like, maybe I could try. Maybe I could work at it. Maybe I could learn how to do it better. But the gift that you were able to give him through your professional, skills, helping him regain his mobility and his freedom and not have to scoot around on a stool to his patients, until he was able to retire. But the gift that he gave you back by saying, hey, we should train together. Right. And that friendship in that regard is what has helped you go on to a path 3.5 years later to become an Ironman. So it's amazing, and I think it's fantastic. And congratulations to you and him for those things. And I'm glad he's doing well, and I'm glad that was very successful, and you were able to train with them and so forth.
And it's no surprise that you went to Ironman either, because even the 70.3. Because if you heard what you said coming up, worked in the barn, then I was the first person to go to college, and that was kind of quite pleasing to you. And then you went to your first round of medical school, and then you got into another, and then you just kept going one step up. Like, you seem like you're one of those that is not satisfied until you get to the world championship, or you're fighting your way. And it's not easy. It's hard work to get there. You have to claw and scratch and scrap and fight, and you find a way to get there. So having somebody like I worked on your back, I was able to let you do a sprint triathlon. I'll do it with you. To a year later, a 70.3, a year later, another 70.3, another Olympic, a half marathon, and a full Ironman. It's like you just kept, I'm going to keep going. I got to keep going.
Yeah, there's no question. Looking back now over the last couple of years, and, we haven't mentioned it yet, but, there's always some failure with the success. And, as you look at my 3 children graduating over the last several years, and every time you go to a graduation party, someone talks about failure to lead to success. But, there's no question. The low point, and we haven't talked about this, but I'll bring it up now, I guess. But the low point for me in my athletic endeavors as a triathlete and now an Ironman. I love saying that. I'm an Ironman.
You'll never look back, man.
But there was a low point. And I think that low point did a lot of things for me. One, really motivated me to take this, although I took it seriously, but it really took me to the next level. And I think that as we talked about the different ways to train, you had mentioned that I should go do the half Ironman in July at Sandusky, although I wanted to go to do the sprint to get a medal, be the top 3 in my age group. But
podium.
I wanted to be on the podium. But I gave that up because my coach told me to do this. I'm like, I'm going to do this, because if I don't, I'm not going to succeed. So I give you credit for telling me to drop out of the sprint and go do the half Ironman with a couple of our other athletes. But I have to say that was the low point, but the high point. So as you look at my personal experience and my endeavor of the last 3 years being an Ironman, or trying to get to the Ironman, which I did, having you tell me that, there was a little bit of myself saying, do I really want to do that, or do I want to do the sprint? And so I did cancel my sprint and went to the Sandusky with 3 or 4 other athletes, and Coach Alice was there to support all of us. So for those, the half Ironman is everywhere around the world, but the one we decided to do was in Sandusky, and I'd done my first one and finished successfully around 7 hours in Madison the year before. So going to Sandusky was only a 3-hour drive, fortunately. So I went up there and met Alice and a couple other athletes, and basically spend the whole weekend. This was on a Sunday that the actual event took place. Some of them spend a Saturday doing it, and then the full Ironmans are on Sunday. But so I was prepared. I'm like, all right, this will be a training day for me. You made it, just do this as a training day for your Ironman in September. And getting to Sandusky, great weather, and Saturday morning I went out and ran and looked at the lake, and it was beautiful, nice and calm, and like, this is going to be great. I'm going to beat my record from last year, and everything's going great, except Sunday morning, get up, and it had rained Saturday night, which it stopped raining, fortunately. But so I was about a mile away from the course. I drove my car and met Alice and a couple other athletes. And, it's always a little bit nerve-wracking in the morning as I'm getting a little bit more comfortable. But so we jump off a pier. It's Lake Erie. You kind of jump off a pier, and you just start swimming. And it's, a regular course of sort of take a left and a right and a left. But I get in the water, and probably the first 100 yards, and I felt pretty good. And unfortunately, it was a very choppy day, and not that I was the first time I was in a big lake. And
Sandusky can be a nightmare too.
Yeah, so I thought it was going to be an easy course because the run and the bike were not too much elevation. So, long story short, it's like I'm sitting there. I didn't look at my watch either this time, which I didn't or Madison, so I didn't want to look at my watch. But I felt swimming pretty well, but a few times I'd stop and hang on to the kayak and get a breather, and because it was really choppy. And probably the first 10, 15 minutes, I think there was probably 50 people that got out because it was so choppy. Mm-hmm. But I thought I was going to make it. And I'll never forget this moment when I looked up and this guy's in this boat saying, "You got to get out of the water." I'm like, "Are you kidding me? There's no way this is happening to me." So it was sort of the, I looked down and I'm like, I can't believe that he's making me get out of the water. So what did I do? I got out of the water and I got in the boat, and I'm sitting there with my head down saying, I can't believe this was a failure. And that moment is like, okay, I got out of the boat and got on the pier and walking my head down, and I hear Alice behind me. She was waiting for me because I was one of the last of the athletes she knew. And she was like, "You okay? You all right?" And, my wife was watching from home, and you can track athletes. So there was a time where I wasn't moving. So she was worried, and she was texting Alice, and fortunately, everything went well health-wise. I felt fine. I thought I was swimming pretty well, actually. But at the time, I didn't realize this till I was dejected. And I got my bike, and I told Alice I'm just going to go home. And on the way home, I'm like, okay, let's look at this. How am I going to look at this? I think Kenny called me, but I didn't answer the phone. I didn't want to answer. And I decided on the way home, I'm going to go back and I'm going to finish my training day. So even though it was a big failure and letdown for me personally, as well as my teammates and my coach, and I felt bad about not getting to the finish line, and you only have a certain amount of time, as you guys know. So I get home back to North Park, get on my bike, and I rode 56 miles. And I got off my bike and I ran 13.3 miles, so I did 0.2 more than I needed to. So I was very happy. I said, okay, I finished it. Because as I was looking at my watch on the way home, I realized I swam actually more than I needed to swim at Lake Erie. So what happened, for those listening, you have to swim 2,100 yards for 1.2 miles. And as I looked at my Strava, I'm like, oh my gosh, I actually swam 2,700 yards. But what I realized...
Just zigzag.
Well, part of it was zigzag, but what I realized in Lake Erie, which was a learning experience, that when you hold on to the kayaks in a lake that was very rough, you went backwards.
Oh.
So even though I felt I was swimming well, I was actually losing time. And so I swam 27 yards in an hour and a half, where if I would have not held on to the kayaks, and we'll go to that story at my Ironman, but so I learned a lot. Bottom line is I learned a lot. And I went home and finished it. And so when I was done, I'm like, oh, I accomplished my goal. I did it, even though it was, I drove 3 hours home to do the rest of it because they wouldn't let you finish it there. So I'm like, I'm not going to give up on this. I'm going to finish it. So that was the good news. The bad news was, as I got home and sat down for a few minutes, I started having a lot of cramps. And even though I did hydrate a little bit, I didn't do what I should have for a typical half Ironman, which I did. And the hard parts, the bike and the run, obviously, were all hard. But I lost a lot of sweat, and so I realized at that time that my body was not prepared for, at least I didn't have the nutrition or the hydration that I should have when I came home. So that was my mistake.
Because you essentially did an unsupported
right.
Ironman.
There was no aid stations.
There was no aid stations. You didn't bring enough fluids or stop enough time. So
exactly.
Yeah.
But I guess to finish the story, when I went to the bathroom and I had red urine, I'm like, okay, this could be a problem. With a comment from my wife earlier saying, when she's putting ice packs on my legs, she's like, you can have kidney damage from this. Oof. So when I went upstairs and I'm like, okay, this is not normal. I better go to the emergency room. I guess I won't go down the story. I didn't tell the truth to my wife. I told her I had a consult. So I went to pass in an emergency room and got some blood work. And unfortunately, a lot of my blood work was abnormal. So for those of you not in the medical profession, I basically had rhabdomyolysis, which is a fancy term for breaking down my muscle in a way that you shouldn't. And that myoglobin gets into your blood and it turns your urine red. So that was the low point of my medical career, medical triathlons, and also my mental part of it for failing to finish the swim at Sandusky. But the encouragement was I was hydrating then, and so the emergency room took care of me, and fortunately I had no kidney damage, and I felt great the next day. So that was sort of that's the low point of my career, both in a physical way and a mental way, as well as
it's our turning point, though.
Turning point, correct? That's a good point.
Yeah, I think it absolutely paints the picture of it being a turning point, because just for everybody listening, it was only 3.5 months before you're now scheduled to do a 140.6, right? This is the summer before the September full Ironman. So, someone out there, the imaginary athlete that could have packed that in and taken that loss on the board and just
take my toys and go home.
Yeah, just hung it up. Even if they continued on the journey, would have had a weight on their shoulders when they showed up in Chattanooga. And you didn't have that because you went back and you stuck to it, and you did it unsupported and maybe with a gallon or two less fluid that you needed, but you got through it. And I think that's, really another example of you having the discipline and the stick-to-itiveness of accomplishing goals your whole life. And that's really what it's all about. And whether that goal was to completely finish the Ohio 70.3 or to have a great 70.3 plus training day. And you had a great 70.3 plus training day, even though it was hard and a little couple mistakes there on the hydration nutrition side, but you learn from it.
See, and the funny thing is I think there's a lot of this story that we going back just 1 year earlier. So you came into Victory relatively by himself. Like, you would show up at the Mighty Moraine. I think you wore all black. Back then, you were just in an all-black tri-suit. Half the time, I didn't even know where you were.
We would miss taking his picture because we couldn't find him.
And then Alice, like, there goes Dr. Mark. And so, like, I mentor Alice for coaching, and I coach her. And I would always hear about the hard work you're doing. And then when I watched his Wisconsin, which he finished, he said it earlier, 7 hours and some change. And I looked at his swim, and it was 106, 107, 108. And I'm thinking, Alice, what's going on with the swim? oh, he's a good swimmer. I'm not sure if it was cold water. There was something going on. So then you then you fast forward to the Christmas party. He shows up with Dylan all by himself, probably just wants to be left alone. And I find you and I start talking to him and I start planning things right there. I start getting Dylan involved. I start hyping you up. We're going to get swimming together because I saw his time. We're going to start doing things a little bit different. Then we put him into Mighty Moraine and he has like a 20-minute PR on the swim. So now we're skyrocketing. We're super pumped. I'm swimming with him, him and Tugboat, him and I a lot. We're swimming in the summer. Like he's becoming one of my big swim partners. So now when we have that Ohio day that happens like that, I'm thinking, holy heck, how?
Right.
How? And then we find out about this kayak. He gets pretty serious. He calls Coach Kate about nutrition. And he says to me, so now I know it's serious. I went home. I did a half Ironman. I had to go to the ER. I'm like, holy smokes. And I need Kate for my nutrition and I'm moving forward and we're going to do this thing.
Yeah.
And that's when I knew he was not going to be denied. Like,
right.
And so we go down to Chattanooga now and let's pick up right there. Let's get into Chattanooga. We're down there. Let's go.
Yeah. Before I get there, I guess I would have to say for myself, I realized after Sandusky that the fourth part of a triathlon is your nutrition. And I have to give kudos to Coach Kate, who I had never met. Well, we had a Zoom meeting, but that was my light bulb moment outside of training for the three different sports. Is nutrition is so important, and I knew going forward after my experience of doing what I did in July of this year that I needed somebody to help me with that. And it's a physician, you kind of know about nutrition, but the experience of sport properly, you need to focus on four things, and the fourth is nutrition. Although mental discipline is important as well. But so nutrition is important, and I really focused on that. I did everything I could. I mean, going forward up to Chattanooga, I knew that my nutrition was spot on. I mean, I spent so much time every Saturday, Sunday in those long runs and long rides of making sure that I ate every 10 minutes or had some kind of liquid nutrition every 10 minutes. But, so going into Chattanooga, yes, I was nervous. I think that I felt that I prepared as well as I could. So if I didn't finish, I didn't finish. I did everything I could. So every Training Peaks was finished. I had it checked off. Everything, the nutrition I checked off, and there was nothing undone there. So I knew in my heart and my mind that I prepared as best I could with the time I had. And so I was very pumped. I was pumped that I was going to do well. And
Mark, it was a proud moment for me when he was practice swimming. His wife said, "How do you think he'll do?" And she was looking at me like worried. And I said, that man has given me everything he can give me. Like I couldn't ask him for more. Like he gave me everything, and the sacrifices, the time, doing your 50-mile bike ride before a flight, just so you didn't have to, like you prepared like a dog, man.
Yeah, fortunately it worked out. And that Saturday before the actual Chattanooga Ironman, I still learned. I mean, you can learn up to the point. So I remember my wife saying on the way back from our practice swim on Saturday, it's like, well, Kenny didn't want to tell you this, but you need to have alligator eyes. And I'm like, oh, I've heard that before, but sometimes you get out of the habit. And so part of bringing your head out of the water to look for the buoy, which was hard in the dam because there wasn't big buoys there. So, but I have to tell you, I'm glad she told me that because you were a little bit nervous to give me one last coaching tip that day. But
no, you're a doctor. You would have analyzed everything. I said, he'll analyze it. I don't want to tell him anything.
I used that though. I mean, it was funny on the, you have to jump in the, 2.4 mile swim in Tennessee River. You have to say, I get up at 5 o'clock and, get ready and meet you and the other athletes at the transition area at 5:30 or, around that time. And I was nervous. I'm just thinking, okay, what am I going to wear my full suit? And actually they said that morning that it was a wetsuit optional. And so I'm like, I'm wearing my wetsuit this time. And so most of the guys that were with us wore wetsuits. And so I was just trying to finish. I'm not here to win an award. I just wanted to, get my medal here. But the,
that was your award.
The goal was to be healthy. And as all of my children like, Dad, just don't die during this thing, please. So, my mind was, okay, surviving that healthy and being able to live another day and to finish this and have the accomplishment. But I did use that. So my swim,
before we get in there though, I was like a principal telling like the student, you come down here and you bring me a marker. Because like I prayed with the whole team, and then he walks up to me like he's in trouble and he's got his tri-suit and he just goes to the bathroom. We have our prayer, and he pulls the Sharpie out and he gives it to me. And like I'll body mark somebody with a Bible verse if they ask me whatever they want, I will do it. I didn't tell him what I was doing, but on both of his fists I wrote no kayaks because he kept holding on to the kayak. So
and beat
he
the
knew,
boats on the
and
other.
burn the boats.
Burn the boats, yeah.
Burn the boats on one, no kayaks on the other. And then he's off. Him and Capitano roll, man, and they get in that water and go for it.
Well, we had an hour or so or more, it seemed like, when we were waiting for, because there's 2,000 participants, and these typical, but we're, it's dark, and we're sitting there waiting for the rest of the people to come up by the bus. And, I lay down a little bit, and I stand up, and I got a couple dry heaves. I'm like, okay, was this the banana I ate, or was this nerves? And, I think it was probably nerves. But so, it was they have a beeper. There's 5 of us go off every 5 seconds. And I have to say, I got in that water, and there was 2 things in my mind. It's like, I'm not stopping, and I'm not looking at any kayaks. So I looked at my hand, I said, no kayaks. And I said, okay, Coach Kenny said, don't look at any kayaks, because, it's like anything else. You look at it, you want to go hang on to it. So I have to say, I didn't see any kayaks. All I saw was the buoys and the finish line. And fortunately, a little bit of current helps push you along. But, I finished that over an hour, and I knew coming out of the water, I'm going to be an Ironman. I mean, at one point, obviously I had to finish the bike ride and the run, which is not easy. But in my mind, I'm like, if I can get out of that water, because that was the hardest for me, it's mentally. And I think that going through this, going forward, will help a lot for my future endeavors. But when I saw the finish line, I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm actually going to make it out of the water in time. And I had no clue what the time was, because I didn't look at my watch. But I think it must have been after the race, or at some point, you did that in an hour and 5 minutes. Like,
2 hour and 2.
And I'm like, oh my gosh, that was great. But I swam well. I mean, I think having the support, obviously, and I don't remember seeing any boats, actually, because I was looking to my left. I swam to my left, and all the boats were on the right. So fortunately, all I saw was every buoy, and I knew how many buoys there were, and I knew the 3 bridges, and I'm like, okay, I can do this, and I got this. I didn't stop once. I had somebody hit me once or twice, which, Kenny would hit me in the pool all the time, prepare me for that. So that preparation helped. Thank you, Kenny. But having a few people hit you didn't bother me. I'm like, I just kept going, and I'd see people on their backs. I'd see people, when I look up and take a breath, I'd see people stopping, and I'm like, I'm not stopping. That's because Coach Alice told me that from the beginning. Don't stop. It's the first 100 yards, 200 yards. If you can get in your mindset that, then you're going to be good. And I think so I had those thoughts from Coach Alice, and as well as the no kayaks from Coach Kenny, and all the hard work we did this summer with swimming. But so getting out of the water was a thrill, and it was in my mind, I'm like, okay, this is my day, and I can do this, and I'm going to finish this thing, whether it's 14 hours like I did it in, or 15 hours, I don't care. I'm going to finish as an Ironman. And then my best friend surprised me, Mark Sanjamena, who was a dear friend of mine. I just looked up, my wife, it's a little emotional, but my wife said, look up at the bridge, and Mark stand up here with the big sign he made that said, Ironman, good man, Mark Fye, and it inspired me as well, just having him stand up there with this big sign, as well as my family and friends and coaches all there, cheering me on out of the water. So that moment was the highlight, I guess, of the day for me, knowing that if I get out of that water, I'll make it. And fortunately, I made it out of the water healthy, and getting on the bike, that's even though I like swimming now more, I think, but bike was my strong suit. So getting on the bike. In Madison, getting on the bike was my focus, was passing as many people as I could, because I got out late in the water, although I finished, fortunately. This time it was just going to be trying to maintain at least 15 to 17 miles an hour. And, I didn't think about 112 miles. I thought about, 1 mile at a time. And 6.5 hours later, I was coming in to take my bike in. And I'm like, all right, here's the hard part. And Coach Kenny and I talked a lot about the run, because that's sort of my weak spot. And I'm not a runner, and I just started running 3 years ago. But fortunately,
it's also at the end.
Right. It's again, yeah.
That's what I was saying. Like, he's like, my strong point's the bike, and I just wanted to coast it through. He set himself up for 26.2
26.2 miles. I'm like, my longest run with Angie and a couple other folks was 20 miles this summer. So I'm like, okay, I know I can do 20 miles, and maybe I'll walk 6 miles. But fortunately, it all worked out. I ran the last quarter mile, although I have to give kudos to Coach Kenny. He came out the last mile or so and was looking for me on the bridge, and was quite amazing. I'm coming around the loop, and I'm like, I'm going to manage these last couple miles with walk, run, not going to injure myself. I saw people throwing up. I saw people getting massaged by EMTs. I'm like, after mile 22, I'm like, okay, I got 4 miles left. I have 3 hours to do this in, so there's no rush, and I want to be healthy doing this. And I felt a little bit of twinge in my one muscle group, and I'm like, okay, I feel pretty good. Walk, run, and the last mile, I see Coach Kenny start screaming at me. I'm like, oh my gosh, he ran all the way out here to find me. 1 mile to go. So he gets my son on the phone, and my daughter gets on the phone, and they're cheering me on. The last going across the bridge is right before you come in. And,
they were FaceTiming, and they were all going nuts.
I really appreciate that.
Dylan got his sister, then got his brother, then your buddy Mark and Kieran are on there, and everybody
just kept adding
was going
people
nuts.
to the FaceTime. That's awesome.
It was amazing. I mean, I that last quarter mile I ran in, and it was a feeling on there. Hopefully, I'll have it again, I'm sure, but it was quite the feeling. I mean, to spend the preparation I did, which was quite a lot, and my wife knows and my children know, but that preparation and the nutrition and the discipline and to cross that finish line, it's a feeling that it's sort of the feeling I had when I got my letter for medical school, my letter for orthopedic residency at Yale, and when my wife said yes. Those three. This is the fourth big one for me. There's a little ones in between my birth of my children and their graduation from high school and so forth, but it's a big moment for me personally for all the work I did. It paid off, and I can sit here with my shirt on and my medal here, and
me wearing your hat.
Me wearing my hat. Yeah, it's been a great experience.
I think it's kind of cool that he can say to his kids, though, because you showed them an example when you were their age. Just work hard. And if you work hard and keep your head down and grind, you can go different places. And you got into med schools and different things. Now you're a surgeon. And you came back and you doubled down to say, guys, even at age 60, if you work hard, something that once was unimaginable has become obtainable, has become achieved. And you're showing that continuous to them to give them that example of no matter where you are in your life, if you just go back to your basics, believe, work hard, good things will happen.
Yeah, I mean, I have to interject. I don't know how much time we have here, but it's interesting is I played paddle tennis now the last 4 years, and last year I had a little bit of knee pain. And so I talked to my partner who's a knee surgeon. He said, get an MRI scan, take a look. I'm 60 and I've done a lot of cycling, although not running in my life. But so he gets my results and he calls me. He's like, it looks pretty bad. I'm like, what do you mean it looks pretty bad? I mean, I don't have that much knee pain, but he's like, so I've seen a lot of MRIs look bad on the spine and the patient has no pain. And so I kind of know the story of MRI scans. You can't really assume just because the MRI looks bad, it equates to your problem. But
right.
But long story short, his recommendation was, Mark, you should not run. You should not do a lot of things that are going to impact your knee. Yeah, so he's like, don't train for an Ironman. So that was his comment to me as my partner. And quite honestly, you always hear stories of people saying, you can't do this. You shouldn't do this. And so I had my reservations and I took it slow. And Kenny knows, and last spring I was like, well, I'm a little nervous. I had some knee pain playing paddle tennis, and that's a different sport than running. But I had to say the last 9 months, since March, I have that no knee pain, and I think partly because of my training. And running is a little different than paddle tennis, a lot of start and stops and a lot more knee issues there. But he said, don't do it. So for a typical person that had their physician say, don't do something, physically because your knee doesn't look that great on MRI scan, I'd have to say that, as we tell our children and our colleagues, and sometimes that motivates you. And so obviously I was careful and I trained properly, and I think that my knee was feeling better and better, and I had no knee issues all summer. So I guess the point is, if somebody said you can't do it or don't do it, sometimes you should do it and motivate yourself to do it.
And I think in physical fitness in general, whether that's Ironman training or just going to the gym, the really good trainers have always talked about don't not do it. Just modify. Right? Modify the workout, modify the activity, the movement, so that it is safe for you to do whatever that may be, based on your conditions, based on your potential injuries or whatever. So I think that's just another example of the resiliency that you have, the resiliency that all of our athletes have in some way, to be able to work through, work past, work around injuries, setbacks, life coming at them from different directions, life getting in the way of training, professional career challenges, whether that's changing jobs or anything. All of that just shows a sense of resiliency amongst the athletes, amongst people like yourself, Doc, that overcome, right? And you work through it. You're still walking now, right? And you're doing great. And now you're doing even better. I mean, you may have knee pain now from having to carry this hardware around.
Oh, yeah,
right? But, I just wanted to, level set a few pieces in this story that we've told today with you. And that is the sense of preparation that you've talked about over and over again, both professionally, personally, and in how you approach your racing and training. I think the fact that you're now 60, started when you were 57, kind of on this journey officially, even though you did that little try here and there.
Sarge, that is interesting. 3 years, and he achieved.
Oh, absolutely, 100%. And at this point in your your life, right? You're not 20 anymore, not a college kid that can recover in 20 minutes, right? It takes a little bit more work to recover. It takes a little more care of yourself and self-care on. Please don't do your half Ironman with no nutrition and, do things like that. But whether it's ice packs or it's cold plunges or it's saunas and things that you have access to, we at our age have to do a little more, right? Because the body's not recovering as quickly, right? And that's just the way it works. But you're in it, and that means anybody can do it, right? We just saw at Kona with the ladies, an 84-year-old finish Kona. So not only finish Kona and do a 140.6, but having to qualify at another 140.6 at some point within a year. So have done at least 2 full Ironman in 1 year. And she finished strong, right? I mean, she was there, no cutoff issues, no time limit issues. She was right in the mix with everybody else. So, kudos to people like that. And that, and the last story I want to tell people, because it hasn't come out yet, is the sense of humor that you have. So Kenny and I are in Lake Placid when you get pulled from that swim in Ohio. And we don't know what the heck's going on. Like, what's going on? The tracker stopped. We're not getting information. Blah, blah, blah.
I'm all worked up. I'm sideways.
He's all worked up. He's sideways. We're talking to Alice. She doesn't know anything. And we get a text, or Kenny gets a text. Yeah, I decided to forget this. I'm selling my bike. I'm bagging it in. I'm throwing it in. And then you let it sit for like, I don't know, 15 minutes. I'm not sure how long it was, but he's like worked up. He's like, whoa.
I felt bad about that.
And then he's like, no, just kidding. I went home and did my Ironman.
It was like the whole day. He got me like the whole day, and then
he let you marinate, right? So I know it was anxious times for Kenny and for Alice and for myself a little bit, but I wasn't as involved in your training as they were. But I don't want to see that for any of our athletes too. So I'm like sweating bullets, I'm like, it's just tough, right? And we're already dealing with the emotions of all the Ironmen that we're about to get into the water the next morning, and we're dealing with this whole thing up in Placid. But for you to pull that carpet out from under him and then say, oh, no, just kidding. I went home and did it.
He likes when people hose me, because I'm usually the one who hoses everybody.
I know, he's the one that usually gets everybody. But when Kenny gets hosed by somebody, I love it. And you tend to do it more than often because you're on it.
Oh, I was swimming one day, and I was getting ready for Charleston, and he jumps in the pool, and I'm in the middle of a long set, and I won't stop.
Yeah.
So his way to say hi to me, and it's me in the pool and nobody else. There's no laying ropes at Richland Swim Club. He jumps in and swims over top of me, and I'm feeling his like hip on my head, his knees on my back, and I get up. I'm like, holy heck, what the heck? He's, hey, you weren't going to stop and say hi. How you doing? And then he just kicked off the wall and went again. I'm like, what the heck is going on?
Well, at that point, to my defense, you've hit me probably 1,000 times in the pool just to get me ready for people hitting your set. All these people in the water.
Bump and grind, yeah.
But I do have to. Yeah, no, I was going to say one last thing before we finish, I guess. But I do have to give some kudos to my. I call her Coach Chaos, but Angie, who we just rode 40 miles together yesterday. But I have to give her some credit too, because she's been a good support for me through the program. So I think a little kudos and shout out to Coach. I call her Coach, but she's not officially a coach, but she's definitely helped me through my
she's been
endeavors
mentoring
as well. She's helped me talk about things. We rode together a lot, and she really was there for me to. This summer when I'm doing my longer runs, having somebody with you is important. Totally. She stepped up to the plate, fortunately for me. And so I've been stepping up. And yesterday, as I was getting out of bed at 7:00 and it's 40 degrees, I'm like, do I really want to go ride with Angie? But I'm like, then I remember that she was there for me. So part of the whole program of not just the coaches, but the other athletes are there for each other. I think Angie's done a lot for me in the last 6 months. And so I just want to give her a shout out as well.
Yeah, it's interesting how your personality attracts those types, right? You got Coach Kenny, and then you have Angie, who's the female version of Coach Kenny, right? The gregarious, and you said Coach Chaos type situation, and you're so organized, disciplined, and all your instruments are lined up in a certain order on the table the way you like them.
She just comes in and
she flips the table on you and says, let's go, right? So,
well, I can just tell you my final thought is watching him come out of the water. That was like a proud dad moment, watching their kid do something, and seeing him come around and says, there's Mark. And I look up because I couldn't see the sun. I see the red, white, and blue, not in the black.
Yeah.
He comes around the corner. I look at my watch. I'm like, that son of a gun got me by like 11 minutes on my PR swim.
Right.
He gets me, 1:02. I see his wife. She's like crying. And he comes flying up, and he has his stunt. If you see him all day, his hands are up in the air on the bike.
Yep.
He didn't suffer at all that day. I mean, it might have been hard, but he just grinded the whole day. And I just was so proud to be there with his family, be there with his wife, be there for him and all the other athletes, and just watch them all perform, man, because we get to sit back and see all the hard work, and nobody understands it, but we do.
Yeah.
We see it and we appreciate it.
Well, I thank you guys for putting the sport in for me as well. Couldn't have done it without you.
Yeah, well, thanks again for all the shout outs. You even gave us some sponsorship creds in there.
Yeah, I think he was trying to get us with Kirkland Water.
Kirkland Water too. I don't know, but Mark, we're just proud of you. We're proud of the work you've done. We're proud of, your family and all the things that they're doing. And, we love having you around. I love when you catch Coach Kenny off guard on a good joke, right? It's awesome. So keep coming back. And I know there's more in store. We'll save that for another time for the listeners. Still working on what's next for you for 2026, but we got some stuff planned. So really, thank you so much for being on the podcast. Absolutely. You got it, man. And you've been listening to the Victory Multisport podcast. Like and share, and we'll talk to everybody very soon.